Very good morning to you. Welcome to the Morning Brief right here on Channels Television. I'm Jeffrey Uzanga from Lagos. And someone is far away in the nation's capital, Kayode. It appears that Kayode has to talk to us yet again as soon as we sort that out. But hey, it's the third day, not the third day, the third day in the week. Yes, I'm correct with that. In the fourth day in the month, I should be correct as well with that. And a lot has been going on. Nigerians have been talking a lot about the state of the economy. If there is any conversation that is so strong right now across the country, if there is any conversation right now that a lot of people are both, it's more like a mixed bag of excitement and anger. It's been a while I saw that kind of combination in the country. And that has to do with the issue of fuel and scarcity as well as pump prices especially. Nigerians are literally groaning under the impact of some of these policies of government that has to do with the removal of subsidy, although we know they are being subsidized, but prices keep going higher and higher. And those are the things we'll be talking about today on the program. It's going to be part of the big conversation we'll have today on the morning brief, as well as every other sector of the economy that we need to touch base with and ensure that we bring you up to speed. But one of the things we promise to do today is the fact that we will allow you air your views. So X and on WhatsApp, all of those places are the places where allow you to amplify your voices as far as the issue the state of the nation is concerned. But let me talk about the exciting part, and then we can look at the other part. As soon as Kayode is ready, joins me on as far as this conversation is concerned. So yesterday, our correspondent, Olu Phillips, was out there at the Dangote refinery at the Ibejuleki area, and it was so exciting to see that finally the Dangote refinery is rolling out PMS. Is rolling out PMS from that refinery. $20 billion investment has finally come through. You know, they've been rolling out diesel, but this time PMS is what literally every Nigerian uses for mobility, for energy in their houses and their businesses. And so when we saw that rollout, we were super excited. At least we saw the sample of the bottle. I've never seen, or a lot of people have never seen that PMS could be that almost looking like water. Did you see that video? So let me see, Kayode, I wanted to find out from you whether you saw that video or that conversation with Alhaji Aliko Dangote with Olu Phillips yesterday, and what your impressions are on the color of PMS. People are saying, so PMS can be this clean.
Well, again, Jeffrey, good morning to you. Morning. All I can say is it's the morning after, and you put it quite well, Jeffrey. It's a mixed bag for Nigerians. But about the question you asked, the color of it, oh yes, clearly a lot of Nigerians are not used to that shade of PMS. You know, they're used to something closer to red, right in the middle of it, or something at least, a bit thicker when it comes to color. So this is a big surprise for them. That's on the one hand. The big question, of course, is when will this liquid, will it get into my jerry can, my tank, my generating set? And I'll tell you this, Jeffrey, coming to work this morning in the nation's capital, Abuja, the roads, all of the roads felt deserted. And I was thinking to myself, it feels like COVID all over again. It looks like there's I won't call it sit at home. It looks like there's some sort of quarantine going on right now because people are staying back at home. They're not sure, do I go out and spend ×3, ×4 on transport? Do I gamble and take my car out? How will I get petrol? Or do I just work from home? So it just reminds me of COVID-19 era, Jeffrey, going out to the streets and seeing the whole place quite empty here in the nation's capital. I don't know if it is a morning thing in the nation's capital or it's a fuel thing, but I've been here before and it's not always like this, Jeffrey.
I'm telling you, some people were actually saying as of yesterday, just to corroborate your story, you're even talking about this morning as of yesterday, there's been that back and forth as to what exactly is the new pump price and all of those. That's why we're going to have that expanded conversation, because you can feel the anger of people, literally. Yesterday, I understand that some people went to work with a certain price of petrol or PMS on their mind. And by the time they closed, the pump price had changed. And some people had to maybe walk some distances just to cover for the cost difference that they had budgeted a certain amount that would take them to and fro work. But at the end of the day, it happened that, the commercial bus drivers or whether the car hailing services, you will notice that there has been an increase in prices because they too have to mark up so that they can make some return on their investment. So it's a very, very difficult situation. And it's a sad one because we should naturally be saying, oh, finally, Nigeria has its first major refinery that is owned by an individual that is also helping us to get to that energy security point that we've always touted. This is the 7th biggest refinery in the world, 650,000 barrels per day. And it's something that we should be celebrating. So, but I do remember that when Melekere, I think last year or so, was with the Senate, and he had mentioned the fact that, look, for the fact that refineries will come upstream, whether it's Port Harcourt, Dangote and all of this, doesn't necessarily mean there will be reduction in pump price, but energy security is guaranteed. So I don't know what Nigerians want to make out of the situation. It just tells you that there's a lot the policymakers have to do to make life easier for the people. We will continue to say this because that is the fact. In the last 1 year, things have become more challenging and more difficult and very, very high for the average Nigerian to afford basic things. So things that were quite basic are now looking like luxury. Even though the inflation numbers came down by a margin, both headline and food inflation is not moving enough of the needle. So right now, Nigerians are literally groaning. Things have been hard under President Bola Tinubu, and he knows this. So I'm wondering what he thinks he has to do right now to alleviate this, because this idea of temporary pain for future gain may not cut it, because the threshold of endurance, or what do you call it now, temperance, we may be inching towards a very dangerous point as a people. And this has to be nipped in the bud as early as possible so that we don't have a social problem on our hands. Kyrie.
So clearly this is big on our table this morning. So let's sort of unpack what we have on the show this morning, Jeffrey. It is a big one. And we're starting off with that very shocking increase for a lot of Nigerians. Petrol prices have now increased by at least 50%. If you do the math well, you come to about 57%. And this has further squeezed the pockets of Nigerians. But the question is, can the beacon of hope from Dangote's refinery rescue mission, can it douse the fuel scarcity and price hikes? Well, we're starting with that critical conversation today as we delve into the ripple effect of NNPCL price adjustment and Labour's call for immediate reversal.
There's a lot to talk about, but we'll switch gears as well away from the issue of the fuel scarcity and the attendant pump price that is associated with that scarcity. We'll talk about the aviation sector. How much improvement will we see in the aviation ministry's deal with Boeing? We remember the Honorable Minister had gone to Seattle to sign that deal. Well, we join an in-depth conversation as we navigate the terrain of Nigeria's aviation sector, from operational efficiency to cost, quality of service, and every other thing in between. We're tracking all the reactions as well from all across the social media, and your comments are up after our top story. So that is what we'll be looking at as well. The aviation sector. The Honorable Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development had been in Seattle signing memorandum of understanding. We'll break it down for you, some of the agreements in terms of that understanding. I'll call it an understanding with Boeing, and how it will turn around our aviation sector, hopefully, because that is the hope for all of these trips and agreements or memorandum of understanding being signed by the minister. So we'll look at that today on the program.
So two vital issues, Jeffrey, that we're going to be touching on. The big one, petrol. The other one, air transport. transportation by air normally is stressful. So you need every little bit of, stress reliever here and there to ensure that at least you have some good time while commuting. But you can be a part of the show, as Jeffrey said, hashtag CTV Morning Brief. Send in your comments about the fuel situation. Are you going to work? Are you staying back? Are you social distancing in that sense and working from home as a result of the latest fuel price hike? Let us know. Head over to WhatsApp right now. You can also send us messages there. You see the number on your screen. There you have it. Send us your video, message, whatever. Let us have this conversation together.
Absolutely. So, hey, as you bring your comments, we need all of those comments, and especially on WhatsApp. We will save this on WhatsApp because your messages and your videos are quite critical to us. If you're working from home, if you're on the road, if you are in traffic, if you are queuing at the fuel station, you can even snap the pump price of the tank you're buying from, or the filling station, I should say, you're buying from. You can just snap from any filling station the pump price. Let's do some comparative analytics. Whether you're in Sokoto, you're in Port Harcourt, you're in Benue, you're in Abuja, or you're in Kwara, wherever you are, let's know how this is hitting you. And our job is simple, to make sure the government hears what you're saying and feels what you're feeling. But we'll take a quick break. I will take our top stories. When we come back, we'll start a very, very touchy conversation. This, what is called in economics, bilateral monopoly between the NNPCL and, of course, Dangote Refinery. How will it play out and impact the prices that we are seeing today? Join us again. Tough on the brief this morning. It was a mixed bag of events for Nigerians yesterday, a day which began with the announcement of a successful petrol refining by Dangote Refinery. But the seeming cherry news was to be short-lived, as the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, hours later increased the pump price of petrol from 568 naira to between 855 and 898 naira, depending on your location. Reports on the newly increased price comes after NNPCL acknowledged the company's significant debts to petrol suppliers, a financial strain which it said threatens the sustainability of fuel supply. The new pump price is not sitting right with residents as they express their grievances. Well, that's not all on this particular issue of pump price. The Nigerian Labour Congress is urging the federal government to promptly reverse the recent hike in petrol pump price. Calling the move a betrayal of the agreement made regarding the 70,000 naira minimum wage for workers. In the statement titled "We Feel Betrayed," NLC President Joe Ajero expressed that the unions agreed to the 70,000 naira wage based on the understanding that there will be no increase in petrol prices. According to Ajero, President Tinubu presented organized labor with two options: either a 250,000 naira minimum wage, which would result in petrol price increase to between 1,500 and 2,000 naira, or a 70,000 naira minimum wage with no hike in petrol prices. The disappointed labor leader is now demanding an immediate reversal of the latest price, noting that the union's leadership will convene in the coming days to decide on the appropriate course of action. Now, following the successful rollout of premium motor spirits, also known as petrol, from the Dangote refinery, billionaire businessman and owner of the Lagos-based facility, Aliko Dangote, has said that the product will be available at filling stations as soon as his company finalizes modality with the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL. When asked to speak on the pricing of petrol from his refinery, Dangote said it is an arrangement which is designed and approved by the Federal Executive Council led by His Excellency President Bola Tinubu. He had described the day as a celebration day for Nigerians with an assurance that they are now going to have good petrol while the engines of their vehicles will last longer. Well, his friend, billionaire businessman, has praised Aliko Dangote for his significant contribution to Nigeria's economic independence through the successful launch of the refinery. In a lengthy post shared on his page on Tuesday, Mr. Femi Otedola not only highlight Dangote's achievement and their impact on the country's energy sector, but adds that the refinery's success could diminish the relevance of local depots, which have long relied on fuel imports to meet domestic demand. In his word, the depot owners should take heed. It's time to dismantle those depots and sell them as scraps. While the market is still high, the world has changed, and those who do not adapt will be left behind. If you're a depot owner, the members of DAPMAN, this is quite a scary news as far as Femi Otedola is concerned. He's going to form part of our conversation, but let's tell you more of stories that we're tracking across board. The Minister of State for Defense, Mr. Bello Matawale, has relocated to Sokoto in line with the directive of President Bola Tinubu. The minister, who was also accompanied by the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, says the president is very concerned about the security of the country. This follows the heightened activities of bandits in the northwest region, hence prompting a swift directive by President Tinubu for the Minister of State for Defense and the service chiefs to relocate to Sokoto to address the challenges in the region. And more now, the President, Bola Tinubu, has commiserated with the government and the people of Yobe State over the tragic loss of lives at Mafa in Tamwa local government area of the state. In a statement by Special Advisor on Media and Publicity, Ajirin Gelale, the President extended his condolences to the bereaved families and condemned the killings as atrocious and cowardly act of terror by this degraded group of criminals. The President prayed for the repose of the souls of those who are the victims, speedy recovery for the wounded, and also assured the people of Yobe State that the perpetrators of this sinister act will have an inevitable encounter with the will of justice. I'm still talking about the presidency, but this time outside our shores. President Bola Tinubu and the Chinese President Xi Jinping have announced the elevation of Nigeria-China ties to that of a comprehensive strategic partnership. This was the outcome of talks between the two leaders during the president's official visit to China. State House correspondent Larry Lasisi reports that the leaders also agreed to build a high-level Nigeria-China community with a shared future. And back here, let's talk security, more security as well. The Nigerian police force is asking the Mr. Andrew Wine, a British national who was declared wanted for alleged subversive activities and terrorism financing, to present himself and prove his innocence. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, the first public relations officer, Mr. Muyiwa Adejobi, says the Briton was invited several times by the police to answer questions on the allegations leveled against him, but refused to honor the invitation. The police adds that having turned down several invitations, Mr. Wine fled the country to evade arrest. Okay, but we had told you yesterday that Mr. Wine has said he's ready to speak to the police. So this is a follow-up to that conversation. Let's also bring you more stories now that the American business magnate Bill Gates has highlighted a crucial need to prioritize nutrition and health financing as part of strategies to foster national growth. Mr. Gates made the advocacy at the 2024 NutriVision, a Pan-African dialogue to discuss innovative solutions to combating nutrition in Africa, held in Abuja. The philanthropist also illuminated Nigeria's potential to significantly increase its agricultural output, which is transformative opportunity for the country. Let's now talk more business on this one. The chairman of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, Mr. Taiwo Yedele, is confident that the tax reforms put forward by his committee as proposal before the National Assembly will not only clean up the system, but set the country on the path to economic growth. Speaking at the sidelines of the 2024 conference of the Nigerian Economic Society Summit Group in Abuja, Ms. Oyedele urged the National Assembly to expedite action on the proposals aimed at sanitizing the tax collection system, streamlining the tax collection process, and improving the budgeting cycle.
The quick wins are already been implemented. Those include waivers of taxes on food, on diesel, CNG, renewable energy, and we've got some on pharmaceutical, we've got agri. So the quick wins are already been implemented. But the significant ones are the ones that we're about getting into now, where we're trying to pass new laws, amend the constitution, agree on our spending policy, borrowing policy, what do we do with local government, so that people can begin to feel the real impact of the sacrifices they're making, as well as the impact of government in a positive way. It's supposed to be a debate for economists. They have professors, PhD holders, and it's good for us to have this kind of debate. It's healthy for society, such that the final decisions we make are the ones that are actually indeed necessary for our countries. So my personal view is that you need economic recovery, because if you stabilize at the points where you don't want to be, it affects the whole economy. If you focus on recovery, then you recover to a point where you're comfortable, and then you stabilize at that point. It was good that we had two professors, both economists, and they had different views. So hopefully, before they conclude this conference, they'll be able to debate it even further, supported by evidence and data, and be able to advise us.
Let's head out to the international scene yet again. 6 children and a pregnant woman were among 12 people who died after a boat carrying dozens of migrants sank off the French coast in the English Channel. The French Coast Guard reports that 10 of the dead were female and 2 were male, according to local prosecutor's office. More than 50 people were rescued off Cape Greatness near Boulogne-sur-Mer. 2 are said to be in critical condition. Officials say the boat was overloaded and that its bottom ripped open, while fewer than 8 people on board were wearing life jackets. And those are the stories we've been tracking for you in the last 24 hours, and will form part of our conversation for the day. But we'll jump right to, well, I'm going to do this all by myself. Kaide is in faraway Abuja. So from here, we will get to what you've been saying. We've told you what we've been tracking, but what are you saying across social media as far as our social media of choice is concerned? That is X. And Nigerians have been talking a lot because of what is going on, especially the economy. The economy is top on the mind. If you do a survey right now on the minds of Nigerians as to the economy is going to be, of what is going on in the country, the economy is going to come tops. And I don't know what will be the approval rating of the government based on that, but I can suspect it's not something the government would like to look at in terms of numbers. But we don't do approval ratings here. But let's see what you're saying on X. Nobody will beat us, Dangote refinery, in terms of petrol quality. That's according to Aliko Dangote. That's the first thing. We had a conversation with him. Our correspondent, Lou Phillips, talked to him yesterday about that petrol, that PMS. A lot of Nigerians have not seen that PMS can be that clean, almost like water. So they were quite surprised. And that's why he's saying, look, this is Euro 5 also, based on the metrics they used to measure these things around the world. So he said, if you go to America, this is the standard you'll see. So that question is, what happens now to the ones that we're used to? So if they put his own in the containers or the reservoirs that we have, I hope he's not going to get contaminated. But that's just me thinking, wow. So let's hear what you're saying. Henry MD says, all thanks to President Tinubu, who created an enabling environment and made the move for Naira for crude. Congratulations, Nigeria. And Aliko Dangote, renewed hope is alive. Okay, let's get to the very next one. This is coming from Wahid. It says, hope it will be affordable and there will be regular supply from time to time, and routine maintenance will not affect the supply chains. Congratulations. We also have this one coming from Sanfad 6. They say a new economic milestone in breaking the shackles of poverty. Excited for Nigeria. Congratulations to Dangote Group. So those are what you've been talking about as far as that statement by Aliko Dangote is concerned. He said, look, no one is going to rival us. He's done quite well with diesel in terms of what they call the PPM, parts per million. I understand Dangote refinery is less than 30, about 30, while we have some in the market that are on outrageous numbers, which is why we had that controversy around quality of diesel and fuel in our market. Okay, let's talk about some more as far as this is concerned. Okay, your vehicles will last longer. A lot of things that Dangote said that you've been referring to. But let me take one more and then we'll go to maybe some other ones. They say your vehicle will last longer. Dangote assures Nigerians our refinery rolls our petrol. Monday Chuku says, to be honest, I have noticed how petrol damage our engines generally. Anywhere it touches has mark. We believe such chemical, I guess you wanted to say, should be eliminated. It's not healthy at all. Let's believe this makes a change. Your short plug, I think this is your name. Nice to hear. Hopefully, we'll get it at a favorable price. That price issue is the contention now. Umar, nice. I say quality of petrol matters, but the price matters a lot. We cannot afford to buy fuel higher than 500 naira. Okay, I think we need to also take some reactions from the people as far as the comments of the NLC is concerned. So maybe we'll jump right back to the NLC concerns about the issue of price and all of that. The NLC has said we need an immediate reversal of the pump price of fuel because this is you setting us up. We will not agree at the end of the day. But before we get to that, let's tell you that the increase has also made Nigerians talk. So let's talk about that particular one first. Even the price is still not sustainable. Fountain the Wizard, this is what you're saying. What we should gear towards is improving the Naira value and increasing GDP via diverse leverage and platforms to include individual productivity that will eventually lead to financial capabilities. May God help us. So you're reacting to that pump price increase by the NNPCL. FS Yusuf says, morning, NNPC increased fuel price to 897. Afternoon, government is increasing VAT to 10%. I don't know what Tinubu will do for evening. Okay, we may never know. The president is out in China. Let's hope he's going to speak through some of his handlers. Let's talk about the NLC, Nigeria Labour Congress, reacting to this pump price. They said, you told us I can pay you 250,000 naira, but I'll increase the pump price. Or accept 70,000 naira and pump price will not increase. Now we've accepted 70,000 naira, pump price has increased. That's a betrayal, and we're not going to take it. Reverse it now. Those were the words of the NLC. Let me tell you what a lot of people have been saying on X. Cloud says, now we're demanding for the old price, 600 naira. God save the masses in Niger. Official Paul says, it's not funny here in Lagos. Even if you set out very early, you still pay double for transport. I just pity we youths when we are going to start our own family. I'm 30 plus. My mom begat me or gave birth to me, I guess, at 23. And here I am. I dare not think of marriage. So this is even affecting aspiration for any form of matrimony. All right, Satiti says, NLC, allow market forces determine price. Our feelings and emotions should be kept one side. Nigeria needs to work. Okay, everybody has their own different version of interpretation to what this will have, how this will affect all of us at the end of the day. So, but we have more for you, what you've been saying. Now, let's contextualize this. The Presidential Task Committee led by Tawo Yedele had made some proposals, and he said we're proposing law to increase VAT to 10%. But I read his comment. That's why I said let's contextualize it. He said there are certain things like food that the target is VAT or excise should be reduced to as low as maybe 0. But to make up for that reduction, there has to be an increase in some other aspect of the economy to maybe 10%. So I needed to contextualize this because he felt it was being misinterpreted. On one hand, let certain things literally have no VAT, and others will now bear the cost of the VAT, which is where the 10% came in. But let's tell you what you've been saying. ND090 says, you people don't rate Nigerians. Protest was done to reduce the price of fuel. Instead, you increased it and is planning to increase VAT. Okay, Captain MD, we obviously cannot do anything about it. NMPC, change price by over 50% today and nothing happened. Please, sir, no need to announce it. Just do you. Godwin Ibadin says Nigerians are very rich. 10% is not enough. 35 or more will be soothing and acceptable. That I can sense sarcasm there. Egbon Brian says 15% would have been better. Other countries are doing higher. Okay, so those are the things you've been saying. So I would also like you to go to his page and see his explainer. Reduce VAT on some things to 0 and increase on some things to 10%. Maybe we'll come back to any of our programs to give a further explainer. But those are the things we've been tracking on our social media of choice, which is X, and we love to amplify your voice. Don't forget, we also have WhatsApp. There you can send videos and your messages on how this is biting hard on you, and even send us what is happening around your area, especially the pump price of fuel, and we'll be here to amplify it for you. But let's get to our very first conversation for the day, and it has to do with this biting issue. One hand, we're excited that Dangote Refinery is ready, and we will roll out to all of us in our cars and our generators. On the other hand, at what price are we going to buy? What is going on? Okay, that's the WhatsApp number I talked about. Please send if you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you're happy, if you're confused, whatever it is that's going on with you. That's why we have a breakfast show, for you to let it out. We'll amplify it right here for you. That's a guarantee, okay? Okay, we'll now take a quick break. After this quick break, we'll come back to have our very first conversation for the day. It's about price of petrol and Dangote Refinery coming up spring. Join us again.
Well, yesterday can best be described as a climax and then an anticlimax. Climax being the Dangote refinery rolling out petrol. A lot of people seeing that near perfect petrol in the bottle. And then the anticlimax being the price of petrol, at least from the NNPC Limited, going up by at least 50%. Not to talk of other outlets that are not NNPC Limited. So it's a mixed bag really for Nigerians, and it's been on for weeks now. The question is, what more can Nigerians take really? What could have been the best way to approach this? Lots of ideas flying around here and there. So let's try to bring everything together and chart a way forward. And if there are consequences to be meted out, absolutely bring them up as well. We're joined on the program by a full panel. It's a big conversation, definitely. And I'll introduce a panel. Mr. Pascal Odibo is an economic policy analyst and group country director, Jeff and O'Brien Knowledge, as well as Mr. Hector Ibikewubo, who is the editor-in-chief, Sweet Crude Reports. We're also joined by Joe Wakwe, who is a petroleum engineer and policy analyst and former chairman, Nigerian Council of Society of Petroleum Engineers, and partner, Zera Advisory, and Engineer Frank Onyebu, who's Executive Director, Universal Luggage Industries Limited, and immediate past chairman, MAN, Akbakwa Branch. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the morning brief. On a lighter note, looks like everybody's working from home. Is this as a result of the hike in petrol price and fuel scarcity?
All of the above, I guess.
Yeah, I was just remarking earlier, this is almost back to COVID era. Everybody's working from home, social distancing and all of the quarantine.
But let's get into this big one, because it's been a headache for Nigerians, decades of headache. And it looked like it came to a head yet again yesterday. And I'll begin with you, Mr. Joe Wakwe, because there have been lots of propositions. Should this have been done in a better way? There's the economics of it. There's the politics of it. There's, of course, the petroleum engineering issue of things. But when you look at all of the different angles, could this have been done in a better way? And I'll take everybody's reaction to this particular question, but I'll begin with you, Mr. Wakwe.
My answer would be yes. 3-4 years ago, we had outlined, I think there was consensus that the current model for subsidy for petroleum products was not sustainable and was not going to help in the long run. And I think the question then was, what should you do? How do you exit this? And I think for the most part, there were clear steps that we just didn't have the political will to take. And it has come back to haunt us. Remember that we're not alone. There has been so many countries that has tried to exit one kind of subsidy regime or the other. There are very key elements that are necessary to successfully exit. One of them is you must have a plan, right? You must have a plan that all the stakeholders will buy into and work with. I think we kind of push this aside a little bit. Maybe because we're not able to build some kind of a national consensus on if you're removing subsidy, what are you replacing it with? So those are some of the issues I think that could have led to a different place from where we are today. There are models out there on whether or not you want to do it in one whole step or you want to take multiple steps, some graduated steps. I mean, we started in 2015 with price modulation. That was the beginning of what would have led to some food regulation scheme, but we abandoned it midway. So yes, right. My answer is if we had taken our time, worked on a plan, got all the stakeholders aligned around that plan, I think the outcome would have been very different.
Thank you, Mr. Wako. Let me go to Mr. Ibikewubo now. You have long tracked this sector and reported the sector. You've seen all of the flips, flops, wins from time to time. So same question to you. Having looked at this sector for years now, do you think it could have been done a better way?
Yes, I agree with Joe to an extent. Yes, it could have been done in a better way. One way that is clear we shouldn't have gone about this is politicizing it or announcing flippantly that subsidy is gone. You can't do that. At least it's clear for all of us to see now that that was a colossal mistake. Subsidy removal or the deregulation of the downstream sector was to be predicated on local refining. You can't engage in subsidy removal based on imports. When you do that, what you see out there is what you get. There's been countless studies of how to go about all of this. So it's clear that you can't go about removal of subsidy without a plan. You needed to have a plan, a clear-cut plan, which the NNPC should have superintended, working in concert with the downstream petroleum regulatory agency and whatever other government bodies you have out there. But this hasn't happened, and you see us doing exactly the way what you've described, policy flip-flops. In one breath, you say subsidy is gone. In another breath, you say subsidy is back. So where do we go from here? We really need to be clear-headed about our approach. If we're going to point A, then let's be clear that we're going to point A. If we're moving to point B, let's be clear we're moving to point B. You can't go forth, back and forth, back and forth. You just mess up the system. The system has practically crashed for all intents and purposes. We can paper over it all we want, but the situation is bad. It's really bad.
Oh dear. Oh dear. I mean, you've painted that picture really, and a lot of people feel it already. Anyway, but let me go to Mr. Odibo and get your thoughts on this. He has spoken about the politicizing of it, but there's also the economic angle. Some look at the number and say it was never sustainable. There was no other option anyway. So I would ask you that same question. Could it have been done in a better way?
And good morning. I would rather take this conversation from a leadership perspective, which is, of course, my forte. This thing has been done before, and we saw how it threw the economy into some spiral. So one was expecting and thinking that the leadership, government leadership, will have had a lot more rigor, thoughts, just as the other guy said, plan as to how to deal with these kind of things going forward, given the fact that Nigerians' minds should be prepared for incessant increase in petroleum products. Because when you remove subsidy, it means that it will be market-driven, and market-driven means that it's going to be driven by the ruling cost of largely of crude oil. So I'm not really bothered about the economics, because everybody knows that there must be something must give to be able to sustain it, especially with the reforms this government is pursuing. My concern is the leadership rigor, the thoughts that is going through some of these processes and procedures. And we keep calling NNPC, and I think we need to really interrogate these things. NNPC is an operator; it's not a regulator. I don't know whether we understand by the PIA Act, the regulators is the upstream regulatory agency and the downstream regulatory agency. And that's where I have my concern that why will NNPC be buying and then be reselling to Nigerians? The conversations must occur. Somebody must give and somebody must take. And I think the overall interest should be the interest of the Nigerian people. The removal of subsidy, the harmonization of the foreign exchange windows, and of course some other economic policies of government, which have their good reasons, have totally challenged the living standards of Nigerians. I mean, that's the truth. Now, whether this could have been done in another manner is a different conversation. But the truth is this: all doctors, they work from a manual, a procedure, a protocol. But the skill of every doctor, his experience, comes to play in the operation or in the work or in the application of the medicine that he's doing. And that's why people are comfortable with one doctor or the other. They all go to the same, they go to whether you're in Australia or UK, Nigeria, it's the same manual, the same procedures. However, as a doctor matures and is able to see and understand, is able to take the patient and certain circumstances into place. So I think my concern here is what level of thoughts is ongoing to avoid what happened in that subsidy must go declaration. It's just like it's like deja vu again. NLC is going to come back to government again. They're going to start another negotiation again. There could be another protest again. So there should be some measure of thought. So I'm just hoping that government people, there is some measure of thought towards this whole thing, even though they look good.
So this could have been done better with better thought put into it. And that's the essence of this conversation. Properly x-ray these issues. They always say the eye does not see itself, so we'll serve as a mirror for government and those who are meant to take these decisions. And there are a number of things that the NNPC Limited ought to be according to law, and we're not exactly seeing that. Perhaps we'll explore that. But let me come to Engineer Oyebo, because a lot of people see the price at the pump and they know that it's eaten into their pockets. But for manufacturers, those who are doing business, it's usually, X'd times 2, times 3 in terms of your cost, what you have to pay, what you have to then charge if you want to put a price to your product. So what are the optics for you? And you can, of course, speak to that question about, the thought process, the rigor that was put into this by government. Do you approve of it?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I'll start by, would it have been done differently? Yes. There's no way we can be talking about removal of fuel subsidy without local production. Definitely it can't work, because what it normally leads to is just a vicious cycle. We increase price of fuel and the price of every other thing is, shoots up to the sky. And then the Naira naturally will devalue because we're not producing right here. As a matter of fact, almost everything we have to import, not just petroleum. So once there is a pressure of price increases, the Naira devalues, and they'll have to get back to the same point where we started. If you look at what happened the last time, there was just that sudden announcement where we don't have subsidy any longer. And then price of transportation will go up, price of food items will go up, price of everything, practically everything will go up. At the end of the day, it shot up it devalued, the Naira was much devalued, and we got back to the same point because now the price of fuel will naturally need to be increased again. So this cycle will continue unless we start local production of petroleum products. There's no country in the world can sustain much of subsidy removal without local production. Really, well, we all know what has been happening with our economy. The corruption has been so much in that industry because there's no reason why we shouldn't be producing our petroleum products locally, despite the good sums that have been invested over the years. It's so unfortunate, really. Then if you want me to go straight to the impact on the economy, is that what you want me to, or do we leave it until later? Because the economy, of course, cannot sustain the current increase. You see, we are just struggling with a payment of 70,000 naira minimum wage. And we all know that 70,000 naira cannot even buy a bag of rice. And a lot of people can't even earn that 70,000 naira. A lot of state governments are saying they cannot pay. Then we also know that a lot of people are also unemployed. So we have a real problem in our hands because this current increase is really not sustainable.
All right, let's take it back to Mr. Joe. And gentlemen, I'd like your intervention on this particular question because I'm sure that there will be variation to this particular question. And let's look at what we have on our hand. It appears we're saying that better organization is required. So breaking it down, NNPCL is literally in the entire ecosystem as an operator, almost like a price fixer, even though we have the regulators across upstream and midstream and downstream. But see the proliferation of NNPCL across board. So what we have now with the Dangote refinery appears to be, I think, what economists call bilateral monopoly, more like one buyer, one seller, one off-taker, which will now have to maybe control the price. So with the arrangements we're seeing now, the indebtedness of the NNPCL, which they finally admitted to, the Dangote refinery coming upstream with this agreement that looks like a bilateral monopoly, how do we ensure that in the coming months, what assurances do we have? Because the bigger question on the minds of Nigerians, as much as they celebrate the Dangote refinery, they want the prices to come down. How do we ensure that this space is properly organized in such a way that there will be fair competition so that there will now be some level of reduction in the pump price of fuel? Because what is going on now, if we still do that arrangement of Dangote still being the sole buyer and distribute to others, it's like we're running in full circle. So we're not going abroad to do that buying again. We're coming home to buy, but it's the same sequence, the same algorithm. What do we do to break it and make it better? Mr. Joe, you come in first.
Okay, thank you. I think you're right. For me, yesterday when I had that news, I was a bit demoralized. One had expected that at least we now had two sources of products in the market. You see, the consuming public will be better served when there's competition. And the only way you can get competition in this market, I know that the consumer side is diversified, so you need to diversify the supply side. That hasn't happened, and I was hoping that at least the Dangote refinery starting PMS production would have started that process of diversifying the supply side. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's what's going to happen. It looks like we're still going to be in this single supplier situation, and you can't have competition in that space. So what should we do? I think we need to rethink the entire the supply situation. What I think the regulators should license more importers, and I think that at the end of the day, I make the point that domestic refining is excellent, it's what we need, but it has to be at a competitive price, right? So if you're going to have domestic refining that is way over what the imported product will sell at, then you have to look deeply at that again, because then you're not protecting the people that policy was meant to protect. So I think that we need to rethink that. We need more supply sources in the market, and maybe, and I'm glad that Dangote is doing Euro 5, so maybe we'll start having some product differentiation. There's no reason why, if you have Euro 5 and somebody brings in this, then you should pay the same price. So we need to now deepen the market somewhat, because without competition, we're basically in the same place.
Mr. Hector, maybe your own intervention as well, because Dangote is clearly saying by what is approaching, I will discriminate by the quality That's simply what it is. By the time you see the quality of the petrol coming out from my refinery, you have a clear choice on longevity of your engine and efficiency. That is one thing I guarantee Nigerians. But it's talking as a private investor who has spent 20 billion to put together that massive facility. But for us who are consumers or buyers, we just want the prices to come down, even if we like quality at the end of the day. So how do we break up this bilateral monopoly, as we call it, or this single buyer, single seller, so that there can be enough competition? We thought that would happen.
Well, choicy words, you call it bilateral monopoly, but can we look at where we're coming from? We need to appreciate where we're coming from. You have the Dangote refinery trying to survive. They need to carve a space for themselves in these markets. They are here to stay. So if they've come up with the best products they can put out there in the markets, that is how they want to enter the markets. That is how they want to function. Now, let's look at the journey of the Dangote refinery. The Dangote refinery not too long ago complained about not having crude oil feedstock. Suddenly they have crude oil feedstock. The Dangote refinery had a running battle with marketers who tried to demarket them. Oh, they wanted a monopoly and all of that. Then the next thing we heard from the NNPC was that all is hunky-dory. They now supply the Dangote refinery, and we now hear that the Dangote refinery can only sell to the NNPC. How does that sound? How did we get there? We need to investigate that. The NNPC is a recurring decimal in all that is wrong with petroleum supply and distribution in Nigeria. The NNPC owns 4 refineries. Why aren't any of those refineries functioning? We need to interrogate that. So if the NNPC refineries were working, outputting fuel, whatever grades they put out in the market, it will be the choice of the buyer what to settle for. We cannot now expect that if the Dangote refinery is outputting premium quality gasoline, the price should be reduced to accommodate us. This is a private investor. So if he's outputting premium quality gasoline, premium quality diesel, of course, he's at liberty to determine that these are the prices I want to sell my product for. So we need to interrogate the NNPC's inability to ensure that any of its refineries are working. Why aren't the NNPC refineries working? If you're operating in a deregulated environment where you have open or easy entry, easy exit of all manner of players, then we shouldn't have a situation where the Dangote refinery will be selling to only the NNPC. That's a big question mark there. The fact that you supply them, the sole supplier of that's locally of crude to the Dangote refinery does not presuppose that you alone should be the off-taker. These are things we should interrogate. There's something wrong with that picture.
Okay, apparently something is wrong with the picture in your view, but maybe we'll just take a quick break, and when we come back after this break, we'll be talking to Mr. Pascal. Mr. Pascal, my question will be, is maybe so they can start processing this ahead of time, are we stuck? Because the picture we're all looking at now looks like, okay, this is where we are. Dangote refinery is upstream, Port Harcourt refinery is not upstream yet, and we used to import fuel, PMS, but the importer himself, the sole importer of that product, which is NNPCL, is in a debt crisis. And now Dangote has come upstream, there will be the off-taker. it looks like a bit of a convolution. Maybe you help us unpack that as well and where we need to go from here. We've had 2 interventions, we need your intervention, or whether this is just what we're stuck with, we need to bear this and see how it plays out eventually. We'll take this quick break. We'll come back to Mr. Pascal. Join us again. Welcome back. We're still talking to 4 gentlemen who are trying to intervene as far as the issue of fuel scarcity and the issue of the pump price of fuel is concerned. We have Mr. Joe Nwako, Mr. Hector Igbikio Wubo, and Ms. Pascal Odibo, as well as Frank Onyebo, all joining us to break this down as much as possible. Mr. Pascal Odibo, on this particular one, I did ask the question, maybe to highlight the fact that the shock is getting too much for Nigerians. Before President Bola Tinubu took over the reins of power, they were buying fuel for less than 200 naira. Now it's almost 1,000 naira, in some places about 1,000 naira. That's about almost 300 to 400% increase. And now we're asking, because even if all the 4 refineries are working, Nigerians will clap, but they will still ask, how much will I buy it for? And what is going on looks like we need to brace up for high price of fuel. Is that something we can break out of? Mr. Pascal?
Thank you. Yes, we can. Very possible. As I said before, it's a leadership issue. You know, when you remove subsidy, maybe we should break these things down. What you're doing is to remove money from the pockets of the people and put that money in the treasury of government. That's exactly what, so you can use it to deal with other costs. Now, it has a challenge. If it gets to a level where the people can't bear it again, there will be a pushback. So governments all over the world, think and ask, if we push too much, will these guys revolt? And we've cut the first revolt. Protest, call it protest. Government shouldn't do things that will trigger another one. I can guarantee you, if this continues, Labour will sit down, the people will sit down. So it takes leadership to sit down and balance it out. And my argument here is this. Let's even do economics 101. What brings efficiency to the market is performance. And performance, most times, is extracted by competition. The private sector today, those who are doing well in private sector, are rewarded by the market. Check the banks, check the telecommunication companies. If your services are good, the people will buy your products, and by so doing, you will prosper. The reverse is the truth. The market can punish you if what you're producing and bringing to the market doesn't work. And we have plethora of businesses that have phased out as a result of market punishing them because of what they didn't produce or what they produced. I was thinking, and I'm still hoping, that government will assist competition and not this what you call bilateral monopoly. If the 3 or 4 refineries, energy and resources is pumped in, Dangote refinery is working, and they are all allowed, and Nigeria needs to decide how she wants to operate. Do you want to run a welfarist government or do you want to run a capitalist system? Well, not a socialist system. Some people will be, one of the benefits of privatization is that the rich will buy those assets. Now, but the rich will be punished if those assets doesn't produce. Example, the distribution companies, electric distribution companies in Nigeria, they were bought by the rich, but you can see they're struggling because they have not invested in that system. But look at MTN, look at Airtel, look at Google. They are, at least before the current circumstances, been prospering because they are offering. When the generator in MTN spoils, when their distribution breaks down, do they call you that has an MTN number to come and help them buy diesel? So the point I'm making here is that government must understand that the essence of their mandate is for the people. And this is important, absolutely important. Well, I mean, I know people are complaining about the profligacy in government and all that. But even if you are profligate, but at the end of the day, the people are benefiting from your economic policies, whether now or in the future. You will open up the market to be able to reward those who are serving the market aright. And that's my submission. Government must encourage competition in the market. The regulatory agencies, we all saw PIA. Let those institutions kick in. This secondary third party bilateral monopoly, it is archaic. It doesn't work. And I want to warn here, the filling stations is a recruitment ground, and government needs to be careful for people who are disenchanted. So it's important that government finds a way. And that's why I keep talking about thoughts over matter, thinking. The ministers, the various people that are leading this country at this time must sit down and think through, how do we enable some measure of competition? Because it is this competition that will achieve what you want to achieve. If you look, when you say 1 + 1, you say 2. If you want to change the result of 2 to 4, you go back to the equation and say 1 + 3. It will give you 4. You don't go and start adjusting the 2. You will model things up.
Okay.
So my thinking here is that government must be ready and prepared to encourage competition in the oil and gas industry. There are independent marketers who can be regulated, not by NNPC. NNPC is a player. NNPC was the sole importer. So 1 second, sir. Let me just be talking with this.
Right.
Sole importer of petrol. NNPC had retail assets and outlets. They brought in the petrol, they sold at their filling stations, and then they sold some more. Allow Dangote to play the same role if he wants to do so. Allow, if he's now producing petrol, if he wants to set up filling stations, let him set it up so that people can go there and buy. We need to open up this system. We can see what it's costing us. The last protest has brought Nigeria on almost like a standstill. You don't want such things anymore. You don't want it. So I just want to submit here that government must intervene and allow competition. It is the market that rewards players, not any business that is anchored on people supporting it, on government supporting it, doesn't last beyond that regime. But the moment the market is happy with you, the market will keep rewarding you. Thank you.
All right, let's take it to Mr. Frank. Mr. Paul, Pascal has raised some point as to let's choose how we want to run the economy, welfare socialist system or a capitalist system. And so how did we get from liberalizing trade by deregulating the sector to what we have on our hands right now, where it looks like this supplier off-taker issue and that's hold of the NNPCL in this sector? Is it in the interest? I want you to walk through the mind of the government, maybe if you can, Mr. Frank. Is it in the interest of the public that this model is retained, at least for now, or this is just mistake ab initio?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I want to say I'm delighted by the imminent commencement of PMS production at the Dangote refinery. I believe that should help bring down the cost of the price of PMS to some extent. We all know what happened to the diesel when the Dangote refinery started the production of diesel. The prices came down to some extent. So I expect the same thing to happen with the PMS. However, we also know that we need competition. The mistake that was made in the past was not privatizing the existing refinery, because we've all seen that obviously the government cannot manage business. Government has been unable to manage these refineries for so long, for so many decades, despite the huge sums of money that have been pumped into them. And we have refineries that employ staff, they have all kinds of wages that they have to pay, and they produce nothing. And then we keep on pumping money into turnaround maintenance. This should never have been. We should have privatized this refinery, especially the last time the initiative was a bit serious was, I think, during the Yaradua's tenure, or something. I think somewhere within that period that the refineries were built to be privatized, and the Nigerians kicked against it, and then we stopped. As a matter of fact, I feel that even if we need to dash out this refinery to private people without paying any money, let them just bring these refineries and then make them work. It will be better for the economy than having a situation where we are pumping so much money into the Port Harcourt, Warri, Kaduna refineries, and we're not getting anything out of it. Like I said earlier, we need to get rid of corruption. That's one of the things that is really hitting hard on us as a nation. A lot of people, I believe everybody knows that people are benefiting from some of the things that are happening, and we need to get rid of all those things. We need to make sure that these refineries work, and then there will be competition. And more people should be encouraged to build refineries. That's just the only way out of it. We obviously cannot run a completely liberal system, but we also need to ensure that people don't get strangulated in the process of running the kind of economy we are proposing to run this time. Because a lot of people can hardly eat food. A lot of people can hardly provide the basic items for themselves. So anytime we have these price increases, it changes.
All right. Thank you. Let me go to Mr. Wakwe now as we do this final round. In an ideal situation, what is always said is forward ever, backward never. But we're in a very delicate situation. And I want us to speak pointedly now to the pricing. Is this a case of forward ever? Let the markets keep deciding. So if it's 800 today, as it is now, fine. Tomorrow, 1,000. Now, we know that these things usually go up. They rarely come down. So should we maintain that approach or say, wait a minute, this is not an ideal situation. Let's step back a bit. Give the people some buffer. Don't forget, Labour has said that you promised us that fuel prices won't go that high. That's why we're taking 70,000 other than the 250,000 naira which we asked for. So, Mr. Wakwe, is it forward ever, or we should go backward a bit? Bring down the price, allow people adjust, and then we can begin to find a way out.
Yeah, thank you very much. My personal view is that I wouldn't want to roll back the journey to a deregulated market. I think we can course correct as we go along. And the basis for that thinking is, one, I think that the current subsidy regime is doomed to fail. It just was not doing what it was intended to do in the first place. So rolling back on it, I mean, Nigerians have already paid some prices so far. I think what we need to figure out is there any way we can proceed on this journey and find alternative ways to provide energy subsidies? And I say this because I actually believe that part of the reason we are not both manufacturing and we're not competitive is that we don't have the right subsidies in the right place. You're supposed to subsidize production. And there are elements of our national life that actually need subsidies to do well, which we are not doing. So my sense is, let's look at the whole system again. Take a closer look. And that's why I keep talking about a plan. I would say, from where we are today, don't go back.
So
figure
you think
out
that the 50% plus increase should stay?
one, to subsidize petrol, and there are other ways you can subsidize petrol without what we were doing before. What we were doing before basically allowed for so much leakages and losses to the nation. I can show you plots of every time the differential between our cost here and that of our neighbors widens, you see a lot of flow across the border. So Nigeria essentially was spending a whole lot on people who shouldn't be benefiting from it. So I guess what I'm saying is there are ways we can figure out ways and means to deliver the same subsidy to our people without the losses that we've seen in the past. So rolling back for me is not an option. I think the government needs to sit back at this point, review where we are, sit with labor, sit with all the other stakeholders, and fashion out a way forward. That does not mean going back to the seriously price regulated environment we had. I think that's the way forward. And I will make one more point. Let me make one more point. People keep saying that domestically refined fuel, by definition, will be cheaper. I have my issue with that. I do not think, given all I know today, that will be the case. So that will make a case for subsidies, whether you're refining domestically or not. So let's separate that conversation. We may have to have a subsidy scheme, even if we produce 100% our PMS need. So the question then is, what should that scheme be? It should not be what we had before, because that just would not work. We have to be creative. We have to find ways to make it work for Nigerians. I think that should be our primary focus.
Right. What you said just opened up a vista. We'll come to an issue later on, but let me go to Mr. Ibike Owubo on this one. I always find it, maybe nauseating, I should use that term, when, they say there was a lot of corruption in the previous subsidy regime, and we had to stop it. And I'm looking at the people who have to bear the brunt of it. That's, average Nigerians, people that are right about the poverty line, who now have to pay plus 800 naira. It's no fault of theirs. They need to enjoy some sort of subsidy. So if there's corruption in that subsidy regime, the onus is on government and those in power to fish out those corrupt individuals, systems, or institutions, punish them appropriately, and get rid of the corruption, rather than pass that cost, that buck, that stress to the people. Whether you like it or not, I think it's been said, governments subsidize for the good of the people who cannot afford. So you cannot now take that away from them because you're not able to resolve corruption. Mr. Ibeke, you're also a journalist, and I know you've been reporting, NNPC Limited talking about the logistics costs rising by almost 500%. So it had been a long time coming. But do you think it's fair on people to now be paying, and I'm talking about people who can barely afford it, not the rich ones, to now be paying 800 naira because government could not resolve the corruption that was pervasive in the previous subsidy regime?
Your observation is fact. I've always said we need to hold people accountable, and I'll always stand by that. You can't be complaining about corruption or pay lip service to fighting corruption without holding people accountable. There has to be accountability in the system. That's the only way to tackle corruption. That's the only way to tackle opacity. At the moment, the system is still opaque. There is no clarity regarding how the government arrives at the current price of petrol. We used to have the Petroleum Product Pricing and Regulatory Agency or Authority. I am aware that as a result of the PIA, it's been folded into the Ministry of Petroleum Resources. But that does not stop them from doing their work. So we need to interrogate how the NNPC arrives at the prices it fixes. And I have issues with prices still going up when you have domestic refining. When you look at the pricing structure of petrol that is sold at the pumps, they tell you it's informed by cost of freight, cost of insurance, and of course, the cost at which the product was procured from wherever it's coming from in Europe or wherever they've gotten it from, as it were. Now, if you refine locally and you do not have cost of freight or cost of insurance in the mix, then you need to explain to us what informs the pricing. There has to be clarity. You can't wake up one morning and tell Nigerians, well, now the price is 800 naira, or now the price is whatever. Today, when you look at the pricing matrix, this government informed us that they've directed the NNPC to sell crude oil to the Dangote refinery in naira. So you're not procuring in forex. So that forex element is out of the picture. So if you've procured crude oil feedstock in naira, your staff here in Nigeria, they are paid in naira. What informs the price increase? We need to know. You can't shave my head in my absence. So I think we need that address on the one hand. Now, talking about the NNPC and corruption, we can gloss over it all we want. But if you have a group that over time tells you they have 5,700 and something staff, and that in 2023, staff salaries gulped, that's a monument, gulped anywhere around 500 and something billion, putting the average salary per person at over 7 million per month. It begs the question, are we living in different countries? Are we running different governments? Is the NNPC self-accounting? Who does the NNPC account to? We need to address that. We can't gloss over it. We can only gloss over it at our own peril. There are questions, and all these questions need answers. How come the NNPC Port Harcourt refinery, we were told, will come on stream in December last year, still hasn't come on stream? We were told it will come on stream in August. It hasn't come on stream. These are issues we should be discussing. The NNPC owns 4 refineries. Why aren't any of them working? How come now we expect our national supply to be addressed by just the Dangote refinery? Who does that? What kind of economics is that? And we want to now transfer the burden and say, oh, the price has to be fixed. They need to give us petrol at a cheap price or whatever. Who does that? These are questions we need to address. If we don't address this, then we'll be running into...
Let me add one quick question. Pardon me, let me add one quick question to it. So for you, is it forward, keep going, let the prices keep soaring, whatever the market says, or let's hold this back a bit, maybe reintroduce subsidy in whatever way, give the people some buffer? The same question I asked Mr. Wakwe, and I'm asking you right now as well.
Mr. Wakwe gave you a fantastic answer. He said we can course correct. You can't go back. If we want to steal, so you can't stop in the middle of the road. If you're embarked on a journey, you need to course correct. If you course correct, that is what any reasonable or smart person will do. You can't say, oh, you're giving the people some buffer. What buffer do you want at this point in time? You want to tell the Dangote refinery, for instance, that is producing at X cost, not to recover costs. You can't say that.
All right. All right. Let me take this to Mr. Odibo. Right. Pardon me, because we have to wind down now. I wish we had more time, but let me quickly get Mr. Odibo and Engineer Oyebo's comments on this. I'll start with Mr. Odibo. Forward ever, backward never on this one, particularly when you look at the plight of the people who are living around poverty line. They need petrol for their businesses. It's like hand to mouth for them.
Okay, let me put it this way, and because this is your last lap in terms of interviewing us, there are four things I want to speak about. I've mentioned them a little on, but I think we need to bring it to the fore. One, you need men of altruism. We can find out what that means later. Altruism. People who are doing things not for their personal benefit, but for the good of the people. Two, this route we are going now, Kayode, is not a new route. This is a deregulation route. The sector is being deregulated, and it's been a process. We deregulated the telecommunication sector. I bought my SIM card for 14,500 naira in the first week of the deregulation of the communications in Nigeria. We used to stand using NITEL, government institution. You will be at the queue to make international calls. A government came in and said, we need to deregulate this sector. What that means?
You have to answer. You have to answer my forward ever or backward never question, because we need to wind down now. I want us to wind down in less than 2 minutes because of time.
Question. Today, a SIM card is 250 naira because of competition. That's the point I'm making. So even if you want to go back to not giving, government needs to decide. I've said it clearly before. They need to decide where they want the money to be. Is it in the treasury of government?
Prices should keep going up in spite of whatever Nigerians are going through, and in spite of what Labour has said.
This is unsustainable. Right. The Nigerians are not able to sustain this by what they are earning and by the economy. Let me tell you, take this as a prophecy if you want.
All right.
Labour will go back to the streets. More protests will occur. So government doesn't want this now. So you need to swallow some hard pills by saying, okay, this is what portion we are going to go. You can't keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
Engineer Oyebo, pardon me, Mr. Odibo, because of time, we really have to wind down. And it's a very important conversation, but we're constrained by time. Engineer Oyebo, your final words on this.
What I want to say is that this current increase in the price of fuel cannot be sustained. I've said it before. Any increase in the price of fuel leads to an increase in the price of virtually every other thing, and that will take us back to further devaluation of the naira, and then it gets back to that vicious cycle. We need to think seriously about any further increases in the price of fuel.
So subsidies should return.
Subsidies should return in some sense.
It should return in some sense.
Yes. There should be some subsidy. Initially, we all thought that subsidy needed to be removed. Everybody sang that song. We need to remove subsidy. And then we all saw the impact of the last subsidy removal that happened. It led to general hike in the price of everything. And then the naira, because at the end of the day, is the naira, the FX that we use to import this for. Since we are not producing, okay, Dangote refinery is about to produce, but we have all stated it is still more of a monopoly. So NNPC is still a very important player.
Engineer Frank Oyebo, we have to anchor, but you've spoken quite well, at least for manufacturers and those who will also be feeling the pinch of this. But we really have to anchor. This is by no means the end of the conversation. We have to thank you so much, Engineer Frank Oyebo, Executive Director, Universal Luggage Industries Limited, and immediate past chairman of MAN at Papa Branch, as well as Mr. John Wakoi, Petroleum Engineering Policy Analyst, former chairman, Nigerian Council of Society of Petroleum Engineers and Partners, Sarah Advisory, as well as Mr. Hector Igbikio-Wubo, Editor-in-Chief, Sweet Crude Report, and Mr. Pascal Odibo, Economic Analyst, Policy Analyst, and Group Country Director, Jeff and O'Brien Knowledge. Gentlemen, thank you for your time, and I see you're working from home, so we wish you the very best on this one.
Thank you.
We'll take a moment now. When we return, we'll talk about another vital part of our economy, and it concerns transportation. That's the moment. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Transportation is a critical part of our lives, which is why we're talking about fuel. And this time we're going to another form of transportation, which is air transportation. There's been a lot that's been going on within that sector, and that is why we're bringing it to the fore. Some advancements and a lot of challenges as well. Remember that the Honorable Minister for Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Keyamo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, was in Seattle. He signed some deals, or some on the memorandum of understanding, I should contextualize this, with Boeing about how to help and support the sector in Nigeria. And he was quite excited with that. We also have the delisting of Nigeria from Cat 1 by the US and all of that. So we want to look at all of the potpourri of issues within that sector and going forward. If you want to fly right now, the money you used to travel with to outside our country is what you used to do, return from Port Harcourt to Lagos or Lagos to Abuja and all of these places. What is playing out in that sector is what we'll explore within the time we have. We've been joined in the program by Mr. Alex Nwuba, is the second Vice President, Aviation Roundtable. Mr. Alex Nwuba, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here this morning.
Like my colleague, they said, I'm not sure, are you working from home or you're in your office because of this situation? You fly, so, but I don't know. Are you working from home?
I'm always mobile. No, I'm actually, I'm attending a conference to write the policy on aviation, Avia Cargo, with the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria and all of the stakeholders in the sector, NAFDAC, NAT. So I'm actually sitting in a hotel somewhere where we're locked up for a few days. And so I arranged for a quiet space to have this conversation with you. So I'm always mobile.
Maybe the first question before we get to some of the details about the delisting and the memorandum of understanding and what it can do. Let's talk about the issue of Jet 1 fuel. Is that what is part of the cost of the why the air ticket is now quite expensive, and how readily available do you get it?
Well, jet fuel used to be 40% of the operating cost of an airline. Now it's built up to 75%. And so when you have that quantum of increase in any component that you use to run your business, it's going to be reflected because you have to recover that cost from somewhere. And aviation recovers its cost from traveling public. So naturally, airfares will go up. So there are a number of factors coming together to increase the baseline cost of airlines, and that cost is being passed on into these higher fares, including the exchange rate, because it's a dollar business. 80% of your expenses are in US dollars or related currencies, and the rest are operating costs. Even the fuel itself is a dollar-based component of your business. So these factors are coming together to raise the fares. But what we think we have to note is, even though the fares appear to be increasing by large scale, on a relative term to the US dollar, it's remaining stable or actually lower. So we have to look at it from pure economic nature of the fares.
Okay, just one more on this Jet 1. How much do you buy Jet 1 fuel now?
Well, it's I would say it's about 70 to 80% of the operating cost of an airline. Insurance is another major cost, and then the taxes and levies. So if you look at your airline ticket, for example, you would see a fare of 20,000 and taxes of 100,000, and so these are all the things that go up into adding to the component. So fare prices, aviation fuel prices are stable at about the $3 to $4 range, but the naira has gone up considerably from say 400 naira to 1,600 naira to $1. So that's reflected in the price. Multiple exchange rate components, which is adding to the increase of the fares.
Well, we know that flying is not an all-commerce thing. It's for people that are privileged to have the kind of fun they have to travel because they want speed and a bit of comfort. So let's now break a few things down. Let's begin with the delisting. For persons who don't understand what all of that means, perhaps you bring clarity. But from what we know, Nigeria has been delisted after being listed in Category 1 in 2010 by the US, and that is, they gave some explanation. So there was a bit of confusion as to why they were delisted. So that simply means no Nigerian aircraft can fly directly from Nigeria to any of the cities in the States, if I understand what that means properly. So maybe you bring some clarity as to what is behind this delisting, because we read on one hand that it has nothing to do with safety issue because ICAO has cleared us with our audits and all of that, but because no indigenous flight from Nigeria has been able to, raise its profile to the point where we have that direct flights within a certain period of time, and that's why this delisting happens. So you are a player in the sector. Help us break it down.
Okay, let's start with aviation should be an all-comers business. The problem is we haven't, as a structure, created the environment for everybody to fly. And so that possibility exists. We simply need to create that environment. And we've been having these engagements with the regulator as to easing certain categories of aircraft operators so that they can enter this market and provide cheaper flying experiences. And that is why Kenya is one of the leading economies in the aviation sector, because they've created this kind of environment. As to the issue of delisting, it's for me the same issue that I had in the future talk we'll be talking about, which is Emirates not coming to Nigeria. But delisting simply means the following. The US requires that all countries operating to the US fall into either a category 1 or category 2. Let's start with the easier one that we found ourselves. Category 2 means that the environment from which you're operating under a number of circumstances will not allow the US to allow you to come directly with aircraft operating from the environment to the US. And there are a number of factors. We have stated what we believe to be our own factor, but it may or may not be the case. So the airlines that may not come to the US from their countries include where the regulator is not deemed strong enough to supervise safely the conduct of that industry, where no carrier has operated from that country within 2 years, where the FAA or the US government is concerned that operating flights from that country to the US may pose a risk to the US society and a number of factors. Now, if you overcome these constraints, then you are then raised to category 1, which then allows you to operate directly with your unregistered aircraft to the US. So by being delisted, it simply means that no Nigerian registered carrier, because of these factors, can operate directly to the US. But there is the opportunity, which has been clarified by the Civil Aviation Authority, whereby if we then choose to wet lease, that is lease an aircraft registered in a country that has category 1, crewed by pilots that operate under category 1, which means that that airline is under the appropriate supervision or technical means or all of these other factors that is comfortable to the US, then we can use that aircraft out of Nigeria to the US. Delisting simply means that they find us not meeting the needs to come to the US. And one of the examples is, and you talk about traveling and signing all kinds of deals, one of the challenges that we have not created the appropriate security defenses around our airports. And the result is that we occasionally find people walking from the city into the airport, sitting on board aircraft, getting inside the airplane's wheels and being carried abroad, where by the time you get there, you don't realize there's no oxygen in that space. And when the landing gear is opened in the UK, you see somebody drop out of the aircraft and fall onto a building, which shows that our airports are not secure, and that is one of the considerations. So delisting simply means that Nigeria has not been found worthy to operate airliners out of Nigeria to the US. The problem, therefore, is that this did not just happen. It is not the result of something this administration did. It's something that's been there. Unfortunately, Nigerian carriers were talking about going to the US without being aware that we had listed that it was impossible under their current configuration to fly to the US. So it is not impossible to fly to the US. It simply means that we need to get our act together internally in order to conduct flights with our own airplanes from Nigeria to the US.
All right, let's come back home before we talk about the US, because I have flown before with less than 20,000 naira. In fact, there was a day, I don't know whether it was a mistake or they were just trying to be some form of a largesse. Almost like 9,000 to 12,000 in those days. And now if you don't have over 100,000 naira, I don't even think of one-way trip. That could have taken us like a return ticket for like 3 times, depending on the city you're going to. From where you sit and from the operator's point of view, given what is going on in the country, because traveling by road now is quite dangerous. Sadly, that is not supposed to be what we should be talking about on national television, but that's the truth, because you're at risk of recklessness in terms of the drivers, and the bigger one is the issue of insecurity. So some people who travel by air is not because they really want to travel by air, because the roads are not safe. and now the prices is canceling them out. Is there any hope, or what can be done to begin to look at how this can come down as much as possible? What is the government not doing, or the operators are asking for, that is not being answered, that is making this to continue to go higher and higher? Now, if we see flights of 80,000 naira, we're literally rushing to pay. I mean, economy class, not even talk of the business class.
Well, the answer is the economy. When you bought a ticket for 12,000 naira, what was the exchange rate at the time? And so if you look at the exchange rate of 100,000 naira ticket and 1,600 to the dollar, you find that you're immediately in the same amount, same degree of space. So we've got to solve the economic problems. That is the key to cracking the whole thing, is that we've got to get our economy on track. And getting our economy on track is not really, like you said, bringing the matter home about how we can go to the US or to Dubai or everywhere else. We can, as citizens within our economy, fix our economic problems. Once we fix our economic problems, we'll moderate, one, the exchange rate. Now we are able to produce locally jet fuel and all the kinds of fuels and oils that are required in the industry, which means we did not add a dollar component to it, and so we can moderate those prices. But also, there's another economic factor, which is inflation, which is raising those costs based on inflationary rates, as well as the fact that the products themselves are international in nature. So those costs will be affected by the international price of it. So, like I started, the airfares have not gone up themselves. What has happened is the naira has been devalued to the point that it appears. Unfortunately, as we continue to devalue the naira, we do not continue to increase the people's income. So while you are making 100,000 and could afford two flights a month with you and your family, if you're still making now 200,000, you barely cannot afford to go even by road. So it's the economy we need to fix, not the aviation sector. There's work to be done in the aviation sector, but truly we need to fix the economy, and that's the solution to our problem.
So let me just ask this general question, because after all of the terminologies are used, all of the MOUs are signed and all of that, the passengers, they have their own demands as well, sort of like this MOU, and they want to see better quality of service. They want to at least be able to predict their travel, not that you book a flight for 12 noon and the flight doesn't leave up until 8 p.m., not once, not twice. You know, you want to be able to go to the bathrooms in the airport and see that the bathrooms are good. You know, you don't have to cover your nose or rush out. And you know these things. You want to be able to walk into the airport and the cooling system is working well. The waiting areas are very comfortable. The smell of the airport is, you know, as I use that term, funny morals. So those are the expectations from Nigerians. And I wonder for you, if this is also in the mix, as yes, we have the MOUs, we have the agreements, but those infrastructure, they're quite important, not just for us here. It's also important for people coming in to do business. I can tell about your country once I get to your airport. Once I look around, I can imagine the kind of culture in that country. Is that something you also think should be on the front burner?
Separates the MOU from the issues you raised. We haven't seen the MOU, so we don't know what the terms are. But MOUs are not really agreements. It's a spirit of understanding that exists between two parties. And in this case, the federal government has entered into a spirit of agreement with Boeing. The relevance of that, I really cannot tell. Even if I read the documents, it's not a binding obligation on either of the parties. But you raised the most pertinent question. At the center of aviation is the customer, and he has his expectations. One thing we must applaud this administration, and in particular the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria, is if you arrive on an international flight today, the managing director, who's been on this show, has cleaned up the place. You arrive, it's air conditioned, it's clean. You don't see rats rolling around as much as you used to. Toilets smell nicer. People are much more courteous. Of course, we've had the incident of the immigration officer asking the usual Nigerian question, what did you bring for us? Those issues are being addressed. And I think that is one of the key things that is going on at this meeting where we come with the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria. Well, we're drafting what we call standard operating procedures that would affect all of the players that are within the airport, as well as SLAs, service level agreements, So that when you come to the airport to do a service, including the concessionaires, the guys that sell you chicken and meat pie at the airport, how do you conduct that business appropriately for the type of environment that the airport is? So basically, these are the issues being addressed. You talk about late flights. The only reliable flight in Nigeria is the first flight in the morning. Thereafter, all of the Nigerian factor issues start to step in, and they become later and later, and ultimately you get cancellations. These are being addressed by, you can see the very aggressive pulse of the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, holding people's feet to the fire. So we should see some improvements. The key problem with late flights today is, again, the dollar. Airlines don't have the resources and availability of foreign exchange to take their airplanes for maintenance and return them to operation. So what we've seen is a degradation of service led by the degradation of equipment on ground. So while an airline may have 20 aircraft, you would find only 5 operational. So cleaner airports are on the timetable for the airport authority. They're handling that. You will find that going. The cooling systems are greatly improved, but these are the products that we're discussing about that. The smell, like you indicated, I've spoken to late flight. But you see, infrastructure is more important than MOUs. We need to sit at home and solve our domestic policy problems as well as infrastructure problems before we talk about bringing in new airplanes or conducting flights to foreign countries. As Nigerians need to get around domestically. There are already mechanisms and routes for foreigners to come to Nigeria, maybe not through Nigerian carriers at the moment.
All right.
Yes.
Mr. Nwuba, a very strong point you've raised, and I'm sure the Honourable Minister is listening, and so that we set our priorities right. It's great to do those things in terms of those signings, but put our acts together is also quite important. I must thank you, Second Vice President, Aviation Roundtable, Mr. Alex Nwuba. Thank you for coming on the program. We appreciate you, sir.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Let's straight back to my colleague, Kade, let's begin with some of the feedback from the people, Kade.
Indeed, and I'll start with this one from Kenneth, messaging from Makodi, Benue State. And this is something a lot of people have described, saying that the fuel price hike that led to scarcity is very clear that the government is tactically receiving back the minimum wage recently approved by the federal government.
Exactly what Labour is saying. You're collecting it on the other hand when you give us with this other hand. Okay, Prince from Lagos has this to say: if any marketer can get dollar on their own without CBN, they should be allowed to import.
All right, there you go. And a final one from Ahemba says, to me, we have a matter of national urgency in this country as it is, and there is every need for the president to cut short his trip to China and return to attend to these issues. Mind you, the NLC and TUC are also bracing for an action to react to what looks like a betrayal from the president.
Well, that's it on the program.
And there you have it.
Oh boy, okay. Maybe we'll clap together. I'm sure we're not dealing with fair crisis. But I must thank you so much.
Teamwork makes the dream work, Jeffrey.
Yeah, we have to go around looking for this fear. As we leave here, we're going to look for fear. But you don't have to bother about fear. Just face the business that took you there. Wish you the very best. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Jeffrey Uzonga.
Well, Sunrise Daily is next from here in our Abuja studio. Wish you the very best, whether you're working from home or from Petro Qs. I'm Kayode Kikule. Goodbye.